year. I think the front, they've been weak in the secondary or weaker in the secondary and been able to dedicate numbers. They're going to dedicate fewer numbers in the secondary now. They should sign Justin Simmons or May or Condre Diggs to fill that second safety spot, and then you'd be really, really good across the secondary, and you wouldn't need to dedicate huge numbers in the defensive backfield on a regular basis, and you could afford to blitz one of those guys. Murray's going to be a blitzer, and you help out your front with numbers in a way that they haven't. I mean, you'd like to ideally rush with your front four. I don't know that their front four is equipped for it. Sweat's going to take some of the pressure off of the edge guys, and you rush better up the middle. Key's got to step up his game. And, the previous regime didn't take those edge rushers off the field much. But you got to have somebody. Weaver's got to get better, but he's not been mentioned. They haven't mentioned Weaver by name one time. Caleb Murphy, they haven't mentioned by name one time. So those guys seem to me to be gravy if they can step up into opportunity.
I think if Sweat's top level, then I think that you may have more four-man rush than you think.
We'll have more with Paul Kuharsky coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
NBA playoffs are rolling, folks, but it's not too late to get on the action with FanDuel Sportsbook. Joe Rexrode here letting you know that new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150 you can use on a same-game parlay on any sort of game, money line, point spread. You can do a championship future if you like, so much more. No better place to bet all the playoff action than on America's #1 sportsbook. I got to say, very impressed with Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers last night in the Garden. That was an incredible performance, but I'm still rolling with the Knicks and Jalen Brunson here coming up to close that series out. Just go to FanDuel.com/Joe102 to get started. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older, present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is now withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline 800-889-9789.
Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us, presented by Parman Energy and Edley's Barbecue. Visit parmanenergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. Edley's Barbecue, a family-owned business that is local to Nashville.
I am brought to you by Edley's Barbecue. It's a local family-owned business. Was voted the best barbecue in Nashville for the second year in a row in 2023. Which makes sense because their food is spectacular and their service is second to none. Their goal, one of Edley's many convenient locations, or get Edley's catered for your next event. You can't go wrong with Edley's. Go check them out.
Got a texter that says, Paul can be so critical, but he seems like a Titans apologist. Everything I read outside of the local area pundits lands the Titans at around the 26th best draft for 2024 and expect them to have a record between 26th and 30th best this season. Does he think the Titans draft and expectations for this year put them above the bottom third of all the teams? There we go, grading drafts.
Why such a fanboy homer, Paul?
Fanboy homer. Look, here's the problem with grading drafts, and smart fans should know this. Not us so much, but, I've got a couple guys who write for me who are at least on the periphery of this. But big national industrial draft media creates the consensus big board, right?
Yep.
Consensus big board. Then we measure what teams do against the consensus big board. So do I care what the Titans do against the consensus big board that includes 6 guys from Huddle Report? 6 guys from Huddle Report. I don't know them individually, but I'm thinking 6 guys from one outlet probably influence each other. I'm thinking Dane Brugler and Mel Kiper and Pro Football Focus and the big guys. They have influence over these other big boards. There are 110 big boards on the one guy's big board that's the consensus big board. And so when
Please
the
say
Titans,
big board one more time.
Big board. So when the Titans draft T'Vondre Sweat at 38, and that's a big mismatch off the big board, they get downgraded substantially.
Yep.
Well, do we care? What I want the Titans measured against is the NFL. The NFL boards. And we don't get to see the NFL big boards. So we'll get a sense later. This is a situation where you have to be patient and wait and see how the guy plays. But so we make the list, then we watch the teams draft, then we judge them how they do against our list.
Yep.
As if we know more than the teams know. Now, Some of the teams are really bad, admittedly. But some of the teams are really good. Baltimore is really good. The Steelers look like they're generally really good. And so it just doesn't make sense to grade teams against 110 draft analysts.
Yeah. Look, first of all, the mock drafts also create like this reality that's just generated reality, right? I mean, but look, people want to read grades. People read grades. People go nuts reading grades. So the grades are never going to stop. I just can't get there to where I mean, the only thing that I feel strongly about is that the Atlanta Falcons get a freaking F- for the dumbest things I've ever done. But other than that,
I mean, they could love Penix.
Yeah.
But you have to have a sense for your roster and for the value of a guy in the context of the league. That's what I say about Sweat. If they're really confident that somebody's taking Sweat behind them, that's fine. If they misread that and could have gotten Sweat at 48, then I think there's an obligation for them to go get him at 48.
Along the same lines here, Will on Music Row, the way too early mock drafts for 25 have the Titans picking 1 or 2. There are a lot of them. As a fan base, is it possible and or probable that we don't hold the Titans accountable in explanations? What does the national media see that we seem to miss? If not for the Cowboys and Falcons, I think we would be the kid picked last on the playground.
The national media doesn't like Will Levis. So they expect Will Levis to play poorly this year. If Will Levis plays poorly this year, Titans will be bad. If the Titans are bad, they're going to pick high next year, and they're going to need a quarterback. That's all it boils down to. The national
he's going
media
to have to be very, very bad.
The national media weighed heavily his bad games and didn't weigh heavily the Atlanta game or the Miami game, which is where we saw the best of him. The national media didn't have a full sense of the weakness of his weapons and the poorness of his protection. And both we and the national media don't know what he could be. We give a little bit more benefit of the doubt because we know his personality and we see him paired now with that rocket arm and quick release with a promising offensive-minded coach, the likes of which we haven't seen around here. And the national media says, here's a guy that didn't get drafted where he was supposed to get drafted last year. The whole league was down on him. And he's being coached by a first-time play caller who wasn't glamorous. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
But I tell people over and over not to overly concern yourself with the national media. Why do you care what somebody based in Los Angeles who watches very little Titans thinks about the Titans?
I agree. I mean, going back real quickly to the big board discussion. I always go back and try to look at this stuff, and I'm not trying to pick on Mel Kiper here, but it's just the first one I found. Like going back to 2021. This kind of tells you why grading drafts in the immediate aftermath of it is stupid. Number 8 on his big board, Justin Fields. Number 9 on his big board, Zach Wilson. Number 11 on his big board, Micah Parsons. You tell me. You tell me how that works out.
And some of these guys said, the Titans drafted a left tackle last year. Well, so if you're saying that, you're disqualified from judging what the Titans did because while they did draft a left tackle last year, they didn't play him a snap at left tackle last year. So that doesn't make Latham somehow redundant. And the Titans had an awful offensive line, and they've had massive struggles at left tackle for 2 years in a row.
That one annoyed me. I really let some Titans fans the day after the Latham pick. You know, like that's 2 years in a row they've drafted someone to be a left tackle who's going to have to move, and Skoronski was never drafted to be a left tackle. I don't know of a draft analyst, and maybe I'm forgetting someone, but I don't know of a draft analyst who had him as a tackle last year. I mean, Brugler just had him as the top guard. He played tackle. Lots of guys played left tackle in college and don't play left tackle in the NFL. I think that's what he was always going to be.
Still a mistake to never have looked at him at left tackle, given how badly things were going at left tackle.
Well, I don't disagree with that. At some point last year, why not try it? But he was drafted to be a guard. He was not. People are like looking at it in retrospect like he was drafted to be a left tackle and they had to move him to guard because he wasn't good enough. That's not reality.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Rand Carthon earlier this week. Media free agency's done, draft is over. How much better is this team in your mind now than it was to end last season? Because as Joe pointed out, I mean, the Vegas odds would tell you that people don't think it's any better. The national narrative around the Titans don't seem to believe it's better. The over-under win total is at 6.5 right now. How much better do you believe when you factor in the totality of Autry gone and Henry gone and how they filled those needs in free agency in the draft? How much better is this team?
I mean, I think they're a good bit better, given the free agent class and the top of this draft, and with an offensive strategy and mindset that is far more sensible than what they've had from the last regime. How that shows up in terms of record and how that shows up in a division that's also gotten better, where the top team looks to also have gotten better after going to the divisional round last year. I don't know. And I'm going to go back, and I've probably done this 3 shows in a row, to Chad Brinker and a conversation I had with him at the owners' meetings where he said, new coaching staff and so many new players, sometimes that gels quickly and things take off. And sometimes it takes a while. You can't predetermine how that goes. It's kind of a thing that has to happen. And you can root like hell for it to happen quickly, but you can't control it. It just has to happen. And the pace at which it happens has a big bearing on how good this team gets, how quickly. And then it's a lot about Will Levis. And look, I didn't like Will Levis coming out. I have some doubts still about his decision-making and his accuracy. But he's got the moxie you want in a quarterback that this team has lacked at quarterback for a good while. Outside of Tannehill at his best had that.
Outside of their most recent quarterback?
Yes. But outside of drafted quarterbacks.
Okay.
They have not drafted a quarterback that has what Will Levis has in terms of the personality you want in a quarterback. He's got that, which gives me more confidence in him than I've had in draft pick quarterbacks. Now you just got to roll him out there and wait and see what he can do. I don't think they're winning the division. I doubt that they're going to the playoffs. But I expect to see improvement. I expect to see a team that gets better as the season goes on. I expect to see a healthier team with a strategy towards that will help them stay healthier. I expect to see a more explosive offense that makes more sense. And I think those are big things.
I agree. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Final segment with Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. Coming up next, you're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final segment of the day, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser, Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. Taking your thoughts on the Titans at 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. PK, the 6 quarterbacks going in the top 12 of the draft still is amazing to me. We've talked about the Penix thing. I think Bo Nix at 12 for Denver.
Ridiculous.
Is a heck of a reach there. Maybe it is a commentary to a certain degree on how teams view next year's quarterback class. But if you'd have told me 6 of the top 12 are going to be quarterbacks heading into the draft and that the Titans wouldn't have the opportunity at 7 to take either an Alt or a Neighbors, I thought you were crazy heading into the draft, but that's the way it played out.
For Sean Payton to say what Adam Schefter had him saying about Bo Nix, like to compare him to Mahomes, I just don't understand why you'd put that level of pressure on the kid coming out who's got an arm that doesn't compare in any way, shape, or form to Mahomes. Look, we know what the bust rate is for quarterbacks drafted this high, right? One of them's going to be great. One of them's going to be pretty good. One of them's going to be average.
I mean, four of them are going to not.
Yeah, at least 3 of them are going to stink. But you got to, the league's approach is you've got to take your stab when you can.
Well, we'll find out about Michael Penix in 4 years.
Yeah, Michael Penix will be playing when he's 30.
Chris Winkie.
I mean, that's just so incredibly dumb to not do something to surround Cousins with help. And now he's put off. You just set the whole franchise into such a weird place. And they've got a winnable division. It shows
it's wild
dysfunction at the highest level.
Let's keep it to quarterback. We got to let Dennis get a question in because of his amazing illustration of you, puff, and not giving. He says, what do you guys think Levis's ceiling is? In the end, will he be better than Tannehill? Ceiling's high. I think his ceiling is high.
I think, back end of top 10. That's where I'd put him. I could see him being like 9, 10, 11 in the league. And you can win with 9, 10, 11 in the league.
What's the ceiling, Robby?
I think that's about right. Like, I think his arm talent in terms of the strength and the throws that he can make is right up there with a lot of guys in the league that you would consider top guys. So from that standpoint, he can make some throws with his arm that I don't think the Titans have really seen before. Now Locker had a big arm, but you had no clue where it was going at that point.
He was also a very good athlete.
He was a very good athlete. Parallels. I mean, there's some parallels. I mean, Levis is more accurate than Locker was. I'm with you. I've got questions about Levis's accuracy too. He's more accurate than Locker was. I think the ceiling's probably close to a top 10 quarterback. The problem is I think the floor is pretty low too. Like I think the floor could be where we're having a conversation next offseason about the Titans drafting another quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you could see it go that way. I do think that I think that like in terms of being prepared and everything, and in terms of competitiveness, and I think the intangibles are really good. I mean,
really
all that
good.
stuff was.
I agree.
That was crap a year ago. It's all about accuracy to me, and decision making too. I mean, like you can't trust your arm so much like he has at times to fit a ball in. Like, but that's also a college thing. You would think that he could. It's just all about can you consistently hit those mid-range throws? That's that's Burrow, right?
Well,
Burrow is elite at that, and it worked perfectly with Callahan. So can Levis consistently hit those? I mean, Kirk Cousins is nowhere near as talented as Will Levis, but Kirk Cousins sees it, hits it accurately every time.
Right.
And that's why he's where he is.
but also hasn't done anything in the playoffs.
Except for going to New Orleans and beat Drew Brees on the road with a clutch drive in
So you got
one of the biggest.
one game in 12 years.
And then how many times was he favored in the playoffs? How many times was his team clearly the worst team?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a Kirk Cousins defender.
That's true, but I just want to make sure you're saying accurate things.
I'm saying accurate things.
Well,
he's
you just
not
said
done
a lie.
anything in the playoffs.
No, you just said a lie because he went to New Orleans and won a game in the playoffs.
You're giving me one game. I mean, he's not gone on a playoff run.
Has he played
He's
20
not led
playoff
his
games?
teams on. Well, so then you're telling me he hasn't gotten to the playoffs. So it's accurate.
No,
Kirk Cousins
that's
is
not
not
accurate
a
still.
good playoff quarterback because he's not been in the playoffs or had success on any kind of regular basis in the playoffs.
The one other thing about Levis that I worry about a little bit, and we'll see, I think this year is a long way towards determining that. Injury problems his last year at Kentucky. Injury problems at the end of the season last year. Not necessarily his fault, but it does make the J.C. Latham pick that much more important. You got to find a way to keep that guy healthy.
Well, he's got to find a way to
protect
not,
himself.
Yeah.
Yes. I am more and more a believer that sacks are a quarterback stat. Good quarterbacks find a way to avoid and to not get hurt when they go down. That's a skill. Saw Manning and Brady do it. They're the very elite. But you have to get good at that yourself. You need the protection to be better for sure. but he also needs to learn how to protect himself.
Feel in the pocket, climb, get rid of it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how good it'll be. I think sometimes you love if you're his teammate or you're a Titans fan, you love him going out there and let's take on a linebacker. But usually in this league, it just doesn't go well.
And look, we knew that they were not going to be able to fill everything in the draft. Without how many needs they had, we knew it wasn't going to be a sufficient enough draft for them to fill everything. But PK, we've talked about it a lot. I still, you come away with it with no receiver taken high, and you've got Ridley and you got Hopkins, but you're one injury away at wide receiver from being in a real problem spot.
Back to NWI.
Yep.
Priorities next year, obviously, a wide receiver's up there, an edge is up there. I think right now, sign a safety, and I'm for Pete. I just don't think Pete is the left tackle savior that he's being made out to be by some people.
This texting troll keeps calling you an apologist and says now, is Amy giving everyone breakfast today? Apparently the Titans are trash, and he says Levis's ceiling is 22 in the league.
22 in the league. A lot of
look,
takes going on.
I've got a pretty long resume of not being a Titans apologist.
I would say so.
I would say you go back to 96 and start checking my resume, and there are a lot of cheerleaders.
Microfiche.
Lot of cheerleaders in town, and I don't rank high on that list. So
name names.
Name names of cheerleaders. We don't have that kind of time. The music has already started to play. Don't block the box.
How convenient.
But be sure to lock your locks.
PK, thanks, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us.
Always a pleasure. You guys are the best show in town by a mile.
Thank you very much. That does it for us today. Chase and Big Joe up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.